I mended the alien queen's damaged armor. And now she's announcing, I'll marry this man. The sky above Red Mesa Colony burned green the night the alien queen fell. Most people thought it was just another mining flare. The outer systems were messy. Ships broke apart all the time. But this light was different. It moved with purpose. It screamed across the atmosphere like a wounded star. Elias Ward was lying under a broken cargo hauler when the ground shook. He rolled out slowly, wiping grease from his hands onto his old work shirt. He looked up. A streak of emerald fire tore across the sky and slammed into the desert beyond the ridge. The sound came seconds later, a deep, shaking boom that rattled metal walls and made dust fall from rooftops. Great, Elias muttered. Another thing that needs fixing. He didn't know yet that this one would change a galaxy. The crash site was 10 kilometers outside the colony. By the time Elias reached it in his sand crawler, a crowd had already gathered. Miners, scavengers, a few nervous security volunteers holding rifles they barely knew how to use. At the center of the crater lay a shape like nothing Red Mesa had ever seen. It was a ship in the normal sense. It looked alive. Curved plates overlapped like the scales of a giant beast. Soft light pulsed beneath the surface. Steam rose from cracks in the structure, and kneeling beside it, half buried in sand, was a towering figure wrapped in shattered armor. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faintly, like polished stone with veins of light beneath it. Long horn-like crests curved back from her head. Her armor was fused to her body in places, broken in others. The crowd whispered. Varelian, someone said. Even on a distant colony world, everyone knew that name. The Varelian Empire ruled half the sector of space. They were ancient, powerful, proud. Their queens were living legends, warrior rulers wrapped in sacred bio-armor passed down through bloodlines. And this one was broken. One of the armor plates along her shoulder had cracked open. A faint blue liquid leaked from the seam. The glowing veins flickered weakly. No one touch her, said one of the colony guards. His voice shook. If she dies here, we're all dead. That was the problem. If they did nothing, she might die. If they touched her, they might offend an empire. Everyone stepped back. Everyone except Elias. He walked closer, slow and calm. What are you doing? The guard hissed. She's leaking. Elias replied simply. That's sacred royal armor. It's also busted. The guard grabbed his arm. You can't just fix an alien queen like she's a broken truck. Elias looked down at the cracked plates again. Light pulsed unevenly beneath them. He had spent years repairing salvaged alien tech. Red Mesa survived because he could make impossible machines work again. To him, this wasn't royalty. It was damage. And damage meant a problem. And problems could be solved. He gently knelt beside her. The air around her felt warm, almost electric. The armor was not metal. It felt organic, like hardened bone mixed with crystal. He leaned closer to examine the crack. The moment his fingers brushed the armor, the crowd gasped. Nothing exploded. Nothing attacked him. Instead, the light under the armor flickered, brighter for a brief second. Elias frowned. Huh, he murmured. You're not dead yet, are you? The queen's eyes snapped open. They glowed like twin stars. Half the crowd stumbled backward in fear. Elias froze. For a long second, they simply stared at each other. He expected rage, expected violence. Instead, he saw pain and exhaustion. Her voice came out low and rough, like stone grinding together. Human? Yeah, Elias said quietly. You crashed pretty hard. Her gaze dropped to where his hand still rested on her shattered shoulder plate. In Varelian culture, that alone was a death sentence. Only royal blood or sacred engineers were allowed to touch a queen's living armor. But Elias didn't know that. He only saw the fracture line spreading. If that crack reaches a core line, he said, mostly to himself, you're going to lose pressure in whatever's keeping this thing synced. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You understand it? Not yet, he admitted. But I will. The crowd watched in horror as he pulled a small toolkit from his belt. The guard whispered, he's going to get us all killed. The armor reacted strangely under Elias's hands. It wasn't mechanical. It shifted slightly, like muscle under skin. Veins of light pulsed away from his touch, then slowly returned. He studied the pattern. Energy routing, he muttered. You're compensating around the fracture. The queen said nothing, but her breathing steadied. He gently pressed along the cracked edge. The armor vibrated. Relax, he said absent-mindedly. The glow softened. Several Varelian escort ships appeared in the sky at that exact moment. Sleek, blade-shaped vessels descended silently, surrounding the crater. Weapons powered up. Red Mesa Colony held its breath. Armed Varelian warriors stepped out, tall, armored, deadly. They saw a human kneeling beside their fallen queen, and touching her. Blades ignited instantly. Elias didn't even look up. I need 5 minutes, he said calmly. The lead Varelian raised his weapon. The queen lifted one hand. The warriors froze. Her voice was stronger now. He repairs. The Varelian stared in shock. No outsider had ever touched royal armor and lived. Elias pulled a small diagnostic scanner from his pocket. It flickered uselessly against the alien biostructure. Yeah, I figured, he sighed. Not compatible. So he did what humans always did when tech didn't cooperate. He improvised. He removed a small multi-tool, adjusted its frequency output, and carefully applied controlled heat along the fracture edge. The armor reacted violently at first, light flashing. Several warriors tensed. But Elias watched the pattern carefully. Come on, he murmured softly, like calming a nervous animal. You're grown tissue, right? You can reseal. The queen felt it. The human was not forcing it. He was guiding it. He wasn't treating the armor as sacred. He was treating it as something alive that could heal, if shown how. He adjusted the energy flow by placing conductive gel along 2 glowing vein lines. The pulse evened. The cracks slowly stopped spreading. A faint seam began forming. Gasps spread among the Varelians. That was impossible. Only royal biosmiths trained for decades could attempt such stabilization, and this human did it in minutes. Elias leaned back finally. That should hold until you get real medical support, he said. The queen slowly rose to her full height. Even damaged, she towered over him. Her armor pulsed brighter than before. Stronger. The energy flow through the repaired section moved more efficiently now. He hadn't just patched it. He had rerouted weak points. The Varelian warriors scanned her armor with advanced instruments. Their silence turned to disbelief. It is reinforced, one whispered. The queen studied Elias carefully. You altered the crown. He scratched the back of his neck. I mean, yeah, it had a bad load distribution pattern. You were bleeding energy into ceremonial ridges that don't do anything. The warriors stiffened at his words. Ceremonial ridges were sacred design elements passed down for thousands of years. Elias shrugged. They looked cool, though. The queen stared at him. Then something unexpected happened. Her armor pulsed once, warm and bright. In Varelian culture, that pulse signaled acceptance, bond acknowledgement. The warriors fell to one knee. Elias blinked. Did I break something? The queen stepped closer. You have done what none outside my bloodline have done, she said steadily. You have strengthened my armor. He smiled slightly. You're welcome. Varelian ships hovered silently overhead. The desert wind blew across the crater. 2 worlds stood on the edge of something neither fully understood. The queen turned to her warriors. He will not be harmed. The warriors obeyed instantly. Then she looked back at Elias. And for the first time, there was something almost curious in her glowing eyes. Human, she said, you will come with me. Elias looked toward his small workshop in the distance, toward the broken machines waiting for repair, then back at the alien queen glowing like a living star. Is this about a warranty issue? He asked carefully. For a brief moment, so brief no one else noticed, the queen almost smiled, and far above them, across the silent stars, the Varelian Empire received word. Their queen's sacred armor had been touched, altered, improved, by a human, and nothing in the galaxy would remain simple after this. The Varelian warship was silent, not the normal kind of quiet. It was the heavy kind, the kind that comes before a storm. Elias Ward stood inside a transport chamber made of smooth silver walls that curved like the inside of a shell. The air felt warm. The floor glowed faintly beneath his boots. He missed his workshop already. Across from him stood two Varelian guards. Tall, armored, still as statues. They had not spoken a word to him since they left Red Mesa. Above them, through a wide viewing panel, space stretched in endless darkness. And ahead of them, growing larger every second, was a Varelian capital ship. It looked less like a machine and more like a living creature. Long curved spines extended from its body. Soft light flowed along its surface, like blood through veins. Smaller ships moved around it like protective fish around a whale. Elias swallowed. Okay, he muttered to himself. So this is not a small repair job. At the center of the capital ship stood the royal chamber. The ceiling arched high, like a cathedral made of crystal. The walls shimmered with shifting patterns of light. Rows of Aurelian nobles stood in silence, their armor glowing in different shades of blue and gold. At the far end stood the queen. Her armor shone brighter than it had on Red Mesa. The repaired section Elias worked on now pulsed with steady, strong energy. It blended perfectly with the rest. But the chamber was not peaceful. It was tense, because what had happened on the colony world was already spreading across the empire. A human had touched the crown. A human had altered it. Some called it innovation. Many called it dishonor. Elias stood alone in the center of the chamber. He wore the same worn boots, the same simple shirt, the same tool belt. He felt very small. A tall Varelian noble stepped forward. His armor glowed sharp crimson. By ancient law, the noble said, voice echoing across the chamber, no outsider may lay hand upon the royal armor. The punishment is death. Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Elias blinked. Wait, he said quietly. Death. The queen did not move. Her eyes remained fixed on him. Another noble stepped forward. Her armor glowed deep violet. The crown is sacred. It carries the will of our ancestors. It is not to be modified by untrained species. Elias slowly raised a hand. Okay, I just want to say something. He began carefully. It was cracked and leaking. That usually means bad. Several nobles glared at him. He continued anyway. I didn't know it was sacred. It looked damaged. I fixed it. You presume simplicity upon what you do not understand. The crimson noble snapped. Elias frowned slightly. Maybe, he said, but your energy routing was inefficient. The chamber went silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. The noble's armor flared brighter. You dare. She speaks truth. The queen's voice cut to the chamber like clean steel. Every noble immediately bowed. The queen stepped forward slowly. The human rerouted energy flow through secondary channels. He strengthened structural weaknesses we accepted as ceremonial necessity. Shock rippled through the chamber. Accepted. The queen had said accepted, meaning they knew, meaning tradition had kept them from change. The crimson noble stiffened. Ceremonial ridges honor our creators. They also drain power, Elias said quietly. The queen looked at him. There was no anger in her expression, only thought. Outside the capital ship, danger moved. 3 Varelian strike vessels broke formation. They did not send messages. They did not request permission. They simply powered weapons. On their hulls burned the crest of House Kaveth, a powerful noble bloodline that believed the queen had shamed the empire. Their goal was simple: correct the dishonor. Inside the royal chamber, alarms began to hum, soft at first, then louder. A guard rushed forward and knelt. Your Majesty, House Kaveth vessels have locked weapons. The chamber erupted in noise. Traitors. Rebellion. Seal the core. Elias looked around nervously. This seems bad, he whispered. The queen did not show fear. She raised one hand. Silence returned instantly. They challenged my strength, she said calmly. They questioned the crown. Her glowing eyes shifted to Elias. Human, you alter my armor. Will it endure battle? He hesitated only 1 second. Yes, he said honestly, but only if you let it adapt. The nobles looked confused. Adapt? One asked. Elias stepped forward slightly. Your armor is alive. It reacts, but you lock it into fixed patterns. If you allow energy to shift based on combat input, it can strengthen where needed. That is not how it is worn, the Crimson Noble argued. That's why it cracked, Elias replied. The chamber fell silent again. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she turned toward the exit. Prepare my war form. Gasps filled the room. She was going to fight personally. The hangar doors opened to space. The Queen stood at the front of the launch platform. Her armor began to shift. Plates moved smoothly over one another. Light intensified. Wings of energy extended from her back. Elias stood behind her, watching carefully. He felt something strange. Excitement, fear, and a strong need to see if his repair would truly work. Can you open a comm channel to her armor interface? He asked a nearby technician. The Virelian hesitated. Do it, the Queen ordered. Moments later, a small holographic display flickered in front of Elias. Streams of alien symbols moved rapidly. He didn't understand the language, but he understood patterns. Okay, he murmured. Let's try something. Outside, House Kaveth's ships fired. Bright beams of energy shot toward the capital ship. The Queen launched forward into open space like a living comet. Her armor absorbed the first blast. Energy flared across its surface. Elias watched the flow spike dangerously toward the ceremonial ridges. There, he shouted. Redirect secondary flow to dorsal lattice. The Queen felt the shift. For the first time in her life, the armor moved differently. Energy that would have scattered uselessly now reinforced her forward plating. The next blast hit. This time, she did not stagger. In the control room, Virelian officers stared in disbelief. She grows stronger under fire, one whispered. House Kaveth's ships adjusted tactics. They surrounded her. Multiple beams converged. Elias' heart pounded. Shift left quadrant. Reduce output to non-essential nodes. What are non-essential nodes? A technician demanded. Anything decorative. The Queen moved with fluid precision. Her armor reshaped mid-battle. Ceremonial ridges flattened. Defensive plates thickened. Energy condensed around her fists. She struck the nearest strike vessel. It broke apart in silence. The remaining two ships attempted retreat. She was faster. Within minutes, the rebellion ended. In open space, debris floated quietly. The Queen hovered for a moment, armor glowing brighter than ever before. Not weakened, evolved. Inside the royal chamber, nobles watched in stunned silence. The Crimson Noble's armor dimmed. He slowly lowered his head. The crown is transformed. The Queen returned to the launch platform. Her armor slowly shifted back to ceremonial form. She walked toward Elias. The entire chamber knelt. Except him. He was too busy staring at the data feed. See, he said softly. Told you it would hold. She stopped in front of him. You have altered more than armor, she said. He looked up at her glowing eyes. Was I supposed to? She studied him carefully. Most beings sought power, status, recognition. This human sought none. He had risked death for curiosity. He had improved sacred technology because inefficiency bothered him. In Virelian culture, such boldness was either madness or destiny. Behind them, whispers spread through the chamber. If a human could improve the crown, what else could humans improve? The Queen turned to the gathered nobles. Let it be recorded, she declared, voice strong and clear. The human Elias Ward strengthened the crown in battle. His touch did not weaken us. It advanced us. Shock turned into uneasy acceptance. Not all were pleased, but none could deny what they had witnessed. She looked down at Elias once more. You should be dead by our laws. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I heard that part. But you are not, she continued, because you have proven your worth. He shifted awkwardly. So am I free to go? A faint glow pulsed across her armor. Not yet. Around them, the empire was changing. Traditions were being questioned. Old houses were reconsidering their power. And in quiet corners of distant worlds, whispers began. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous in a different way. They did not fear sacred things. They improved them. And at the center of it all stood a simple mechanic from a desert colony, the human who should have been executed, but instead had just helped the queen win a war. The Varelian Empire had not known silence like this in centuries. Across thousands of worlds, screens and holograms flickered to life. Royal symbols burned in bright blue light. Citizens stopped their work. Warships paused mid-patrol. Even distant colonies tuned in. The queen had called for a full imperial assembly. That alone meant history was about to change. Elias Ward stood beside her on the grand platform of the royal chamber. He still wore his old boots. He had tried to clean them. It did not help. Around them stood nobles, war commanders, priests of the crown, and leaders of the great houses. Their armor glowed in many colors. Blue for loyalty, gold for bloodline, red for war, violet for knowledge. Many of those colors flickered with unease, because the human was standing at the queen's right side, not kneeling, not chained, standing. The chamber doors sealed shut. The live transmission began. The queen stepped forward. Her armor shimmered brighter and stronger than ever before. The repaired section Elias had worked on now pulsed as if it had always belonged there. "My people," she began, her voice steady and powerful. "You have witnessed a rebellion of House Kaveth." Murmurs filled the hall. They challenged the strength of the crown. They claimed it had been weakened. Her eyes briefly moved toward Elias. They were wrong. Images of the battle filled the air. The queen standing against multiple ships, her armor adapting in real time. Gasps rippled again, even though many had already seen the footage. "The crown did not weaken," she continued. "It evolved." The word echoed through the chamber. Evolved. That was not a word Varelians used lightly. One of the high priests stepped forward. His armor glowed pale silver. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the evolution came through alien interference." The word interference carried weight. It meant corruption. It meant contamination. Elias shifted slightly, uncomfortable. The queen turned her gaze to the priest. It came through improvement. The priest lowered his head slightly but did not retreat. "Our laws forbid outsiders from touching royal bioarmor. The punishment remains clear." Several nobles nodded. Execution, exile, erasure. Elias felt a cold wave pass through him. He had known this moment might come. The queen raised her hand again. Silence returned instantly. "Our laws were written in a time of fear," she said, "when our ancestors believed change meant weakness." Her armor brightened. They were wrong. A shock passed through the chamber. To question ancient law was almost unheard of. The crimson noble from House Kaveth's allied branch stepped forward. "Your Majesty, tradition protects us. Without it, we lose who we are." The queen's gaze sharpened. "Tradition did not stop my armor from cracking." The chamber froze. Tradition did not prevent energy waste. Tradition did not win the battle. Her glowing eyes shifted fully toward Elias. He did. Every head turned toward the human. Elias raised one hand slightly. "Just to be clear," he said softly, "you were the one punching warships." A few younger nobles tried not to react. The queen ignored the comment. "He saw weakness where we saw ritual. He asked why when we did not." The priest spoke again. "Humans lack reverence. They dismantle sacred designs." "Yes," the queen said calmly. "They do." Her armor gave off a low hum. "And that is why they advance." The chamber went silent again. Across the empire, billions listened. The queen stepped closer to Elias. He suddenly felt very aware of how small he was compared to her. "By ancient law," she said clearly, "one who strengthens a crown beyond its former glory earns eternal bond right." The noble stiffened. That law was rarely invoked. It was old, almost forgotten. The priest's voice trembled slightly. "Bond right is reserved for blood-bound allies and chosen consorts." "Yes," the queen replied. Elias blinked. "Wait," he whispered under his breath. The queen turned fully toward him now. Her armor shifted subtly, not into war form, but into ceremonial glow. "Elias Ward of Earth," she declared, her voice carrying to every world watching. "You have strengthened the crown in battle. You have altered sacred design without fear. You have shown loyalty without demand." The nobles began to understand. Shock turned into alarm. One noble stepped forward urgently. "Your Majesty, you cannot mean." She raised her voice, cutting him off. "I will marry this man." The words fell like a meteor strike. The chamber erupted. Armor lights flashed wildly. Voices rose in protest. Some shouted in disbelief, others in outrage. Across the empire, entire cities froze in shock. Elias stared at her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You're going to what?" The queen did not smile, but her armor pulsed warmly. "I will bind him to crown." The high priest stepped forward quickly. "This is unprecedented. No human has ever strengthened us before," she replied. The crimson noble shook his head. "He is not Varelian. He does not carry royal blood." "He carries innovation," the queen answered. Elias leaned slightly closer to her and whispered, "Are you sure about this?" Her glowing eyes lowered just enough to meet his. "You improve my armor," she said softly, but her voice still carried. "Now you will help improve my empire." The nobles began arguing openly now. This will weaken alliances. It will anger traditional houses. It will invite instability. The queen turned sharply toward them. "Instability already exists." Her armor flared briefly, and the chamber quieted. "For centuries we have repeated the same designs, the same tactics, the same thinking." She gestured toward Elias. "He does not think as we do. That is his strength." A younger noble from the House of Knowledge stepped forward slowly. "Your Majesty, if humans can alter bioarmor, what else might they improve?" The question hung in the air. Ship designs, energy cores, military strategy, infrastructure, medicine. Possibilities spread like wildfire. The priest looked troubled. "But marriage binds a crown permanently." "Yes," the queen said. She turned once more to Elias. "You fear this," she observed. "Honestly," he said. "Yeah, a little." "Why?" "Because I'm just a mechanic." The chamber quieted again. The queen studied him carefully. "You stepped into sacred ground without fear. You faced our warriors without submission. You stood in battle and guided the crown." She stepped closer. "That is not just anything." He swallowed. "I didn't do it for power." "I know," she replied. And that was the part that mattered most. The nobles could see it now. He did not seek status. He did not seek wealth. He did not seek control. He saw broken things and wanted them fixed. That kind of mind was rare and dangerous. The queen turned back to her people. "The Union will not erase who we are. It will expand us." The priest lowered his head slowly. The crimson noble clenched his fist but said nothing, because the truth was clear. They had all seen the battle. They had all seen the armor evolve. They could not deny the results. The queen extended her hand toward Elias. The entire empire watched. He hesitated only a second. Then he placed his grease-stained hand into hers. Her armor pulsed brightly. Not violently, not aggressively, but warmly. Bond acknowledged. Across the stars, reactions exploded. Some celebrated the courage. Some feared contamination. Some prepared political strategies. And in hidden corners of rival empires, leaders took notice. If the Varelians were willing to change this much, what would they become next? Back in the royal chamber, silence slowly returned. The queen lifted their joined hands. "It is decided." The law had been invoked. The crown had chosen. And the human who should have been executed was now bound to the most powerful throne in the sector. Elias leaned slightly toward her again. "So, when exactly were you planning to tell me about this bond right rule?" A faint glow shimmered across her armor. "I am telling you now." He let out a slow breath. "This is going to be complicated, isn't it?" "Yes," she answered calmly. Around them, the empire shifted. Tradition cracked. Possibility opened. And somewhere far beyond their borders, other civilizations began to worry. Because if a simple human mechanic could stand beside a Varelian queen, what else might humanity stand beside next? The galaxy did not stay quiet after the announcement. It shook. Across Varelian space, reactions spread like wildfire. Some worlds celebrated. Young warriors praised the queen's courage. Scientists and engineers whisper with excitement, but older houses were not pleased. To them, the marriage was not romance. It was revolution. And revolution always has enemies. Elias Ward stood on a high balcony inside the royal spire, staring out the endless lights of the capital world below. The city stretched across the planet, like living crystal. Towers curved upward like growing plants. Ships moved in smooth patterns across the sky. It was beautiful and completely overwhelming. Behind him, royal attendants moved quietly. They were adjusting ceremonial designs for the upcoming bond ritual. The entire empire would witness it. He rubbed his forehead. "I fixed one cracked shoulder plate," he muttered softly, "and now I'm part galactic politics." "You're adjusting well." The Queen's voice came from behind him. He turned. She stood taller than ever, her armor glowing in calm, steady waves. Since the battle, the armor had continued adapting. It moved more fluidly now, stronger, more efficient. He had spent the last several days studying it with Varelian biosmiths. At first, they treated him like a dangerous animal. Now they asked questions, many questions. He scratched the back of his neck. "Define adjusting," he replied. She stepped beside him on the balcony. Below, citizens had gathered in massive numbers. Some looked curious, some nervous, some proud. "You fear becoming a symbol," she said. He nodded slowly. "I don't want people thinking I'm special." "You altered royal bioarchitecture in one night," she replied calmly. "You are special." He shook his head. "I just saw a problem." She looked out over her world. "And that is why this matters." But not everyone agreed. Far beyond the capital, in the shadow of a distant moon, a fleet gathered silently. House Terev, old blood, older pride. They had remained silent during the rebellion of House Kaveth. But silence did not mean acceptance. Their leader, Lord Verex, stood aboard his flagship, staring at the glowing image of the Queen and Elias standing together. "A human," he said quietly, bound to the crown. A commander beside him spoke carefully. "The Empire appears stable, my lord." "For now," Verex answered. He turned toward the star map. "If humans gain influence in Varelian design, our superiority fades." The commander hesitated. "Do you propose rebellion?" Verex shook his head. "No, something quieter." He zoomed the map outward, toward the outer human territories. If the Empire bonds with humanity, then humanity must be shown weakness. Back on the capital world, Elias sat inside a bioengineering chamber with 3 Varelian scientists. Holographic models of armor floated in the air. He pointed at one section. "See here? These ceremonial spines look impressive, but they drain energy constantly." "They honor the first queen," one scientist replied carefully. "I'm not saying remove them," Elias said. "Just reduce energy feed. Let them glow when needed." The scientists exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand something new. Improvement did not mean disrespect. It meant efficiency. A loud alert suddenly echoed through the chamber. The room lights shifted to warning red. The Queen's voice came over the comm system. "Elias, report to the command hall." His stomach dropped. That doesn't sound good. The command hall was alive with tension. Holographic projections filled the air. A Varelian border colony was under attack. Not by Varelians, by unknown ships. The images were unclear, but Elias recognized something about their structure. "That's human design," he said quietly. The room went silent. The Queen turned toward him. "You are certain?" "Yes," he replied, "but not official military." The ships were older models, modified, possibly stolen, pirate or extremist factions. Lord Verex watched from the shadows of his own bridge as chaos spread. The plan was simple. Frame humanity, create doubt, break trust. Back in the command hall, tension grew rapidly. Some nobles began whispering. "Humans attack our colonies? This is their true nature." Elias stepped forward. "No," he said firmly. "This isn't how Earth operates. You defend your species quickly." A noble snapped. "I defend logic," Elias replied. "If humanity wanted war, they wouldn't attack one border colony with outdated ships." The Queen watched him carefully. You believe this is manipulation. Yes, he said. The hologram shifted. The colony's defense shields were failing. The Queen's armor began glowing brighter. Prepare my war fleet, she commanded. Elias turned quickly. Wait, if we rush in angry, that's exactly what whoever did this wants. The chamber paused. What do you suggest? She asked. He studied the ship patterns again. They want a public clash, so don't give them one. He looked at the tactical officer. Can we jam external communications in that sector? Yes. Good. Send a small stealth squad. Disable the attacking ships quietly. Capture survivors. The nobles murmured. That is not honorable battle. One argued. It's smart, Elias replied. The Queen made her decision instantly. Execute the human strategy. Hours later, the plan worked. Varelian stealth vessels surrounded the attackers silently. Engines were disabled. Ships captured intact. No public explosion. No dramatic battle. When the attackers were interrogated, the truth surfaced quickly. They were hired mercenaries, paid by agents linked to House Terev. The evidence was clear. In the royal chamber, Lord Varix stood restrained before the Queen. You risk civil fracture for pride, she said calmly. You weaken us, Varix replied bitterly. You tie our future to unpredictable humans. The Queen gestured toward Elias. He predicted your strategy. Varix stared at the human. You interfere in matters beyond your species. Elias shrugged slightly. You attack civilians. Varix had no answer for that. The nobles watched silently as the Queen delivered judgment. House Terra would lose fleet authority. Its leadership dissolved. Its power broken without war. Not through brute force, but through strategy. Human strategy. Days later, the bond ceremony began. Across the empire, billions watched again. The Queen stood in full ceremonial form. Elias stood beside her, wearing formal Varelian fabric over his usual clothes. He still felt like a mechanic, but he stood straighter now. The high priest approached. By ancient law and renewed will, the crown binds strength to strength. The Queen placed her glowing hand over Elias's. The armor pulsed, not violently, not overwhelmingly, but steadily, balanced. For the first time, human and Varelian technology began linking at the surface, not merging, connecting, a symbol of cooperation. Across the chamber, many nobles who once doubted now bowed willingly, because the evidence was clear. The empire had not weakened. It had grown sharper, more adaptable, more aware. The ritual completed, the chamber filled with steady light. Not chaos, not division, but change. Later that night, the balcony was quiet again. Elias leaned on the railing, looking out at the glowing world. Well, he said softly, that escalated. The Queen stepped beside him. Yes. He glanced up at her. You know, this is just the beginning, right? Yes, she replied again. He smiled faintly. You're going to have to get used to humans asking why about everything. Her armor gave a warm pulse. That is why I chose you. He looked out toward the stars. Somewhere out there, other empires were watching carefully. The Varelians had done something no ancient power liked to do. They had changed, and humanity, the species known for questioning everything, now stood beside one of the strongest thrones in the galaxy, not through conquest, not through force, but through improvement. Elias exhaled slowly. So, he asked quietly, what do we fix next? The Queen looked at the endless stars. The future, she answered, and far beyond their borders, the galaxy began adjusting to a new reality. Never underestimate a species that sees sacred things and asks how to make them better.